Om Agnir Murda Chakshushi Chandra Suryo Vishaha Shrotrivak Vivitasha Vedaha Vayu Prana Hridaya Vishvamasha Padbyam Prithivihi Sarvabhutantaratma Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Verily, that one indwelling consciousness is the divine presence in all things. Fire is its head, the sun and moon its two eyes. The revelation of revealed scripture is its cosmic mind. The universe is its heart, its arms and legs, the four directions. The wind is its breath, music is its voice, and from its feet the earth has originated. Om, peace, peace, peace. And there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, sustain us, and illumine our thinking process. Free us from impediments and obstacles, and reveal to us the essence of the teachings. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, and peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Tat Sat. So after several weekends absence from this venue of Sunday class, we return after our retreat at Windward Waters on the Columbia River Gorge in Oregon, where we were teaching some deep meanings of words of Sanskrit and how they connect to principles and overall to the path to enlightenment. That is, how to illumine the mind, because so many minds today are focused on the gross, on the banal, on the depressing, on the atomic. We want to focus the mind more on the atmic, not the atomic. Once my teacher made that comment, people say this is the atomic age. I disagree. It's the atmic age. It's the Kali Yuga, means it's the best time to realize your true nature, lift the mind off of mundane, conventional, and quotidian things, and place it on a higher elevation of some of the teachings that you'll be hearing today from the Paingala Upanisad. Paingala Upanisad is a little bit longer Upanishad than the ones I've been taking up with all of you over the last several years, because I've been selecting the shortest ones on purpose so that we can have a 2 to 3 class series. This could take 4 or 5 classes. So this month of Sundays, except for the last Sunday, which we're on seminar, that seminar being, by the way, the key and profound teachings of Swami Vivekananda. We'll spend 3 half days doing that the last weekend of this month. But stepping up to that, this Sunday and the next 2 Sundays will be given to the Paingala Upanishad. The word is hard to define, really. It suggests Pingala because the devotee's name is Paingala, who comes to the great sage Yajnavalkya, whom probably all of us have heard of, one of those crossover seers in India that got featured in other Upanishads and some very beautiful teachings about the Atman, like in one of them that he's well known for, it's not for the sake of the husband that the husband's loved, but for the sake of the Atman in the husband. It's not for the sake of the wife that the wife is loved, but it's for the sake of the Atman in the wife that the wife is loved. Same for the baby and children. So these Indian seers kept their mind on the specific, on the deep, on the profound, on the real, and they they X'd out of the equation the unreal, at least as far as it tended to invade the divine space of the real, as I was just chanting. Pretty soon they saw everything as a manifestation of consciousness. Even the sun, the third eye became associated. So Paingala, one of the definitions could be right side, because the Paingala Upanisad starts at the base of the spine and moves up the right side with the Ida. These are called nadis, by the way. We have to learn about nadis in the West, know that there are some subtle channels, because again, we're focusing on gross things, nerves, blood vessels, intestines, channels that carry gross stuff, and they make whole careers out of studying the gross. And the problem with that is then we forget the subtle. The subtle in this case would be the mind, and there are many channels running through the mind, not just physical, the kind that get blocked up when you have an aneurysm or something, but channels that carry thought. And that's where you find intelligence beginning to manifest itself in the human being. We hope for more and more of that to happen, even in this darksome age called the Kali Yuga, as I was just mentioning. It's a good time to see the contrast between the darkness of everything that's going on in the world today and the light that can be afforded to you, and is afforded to you in meditation if you practice it. It is afforded to you in deep sleep if you become aware of it. It is even come into your dreams, as we will see by one chart. It's the background or backdrop of all the seeds that turn into solid objects later. Thought turns into a solid object later, as the teaching of Sri Sharda Devi told us. So Pingala nerve, it starts at the base of the spine, if you want to use the body as a reference point, and winds its way up the Shushumna to the right ear and eye. And it's also as opposed or contrasted to the Ida, which does the same on the left-hand side. It's male, it's aggressive, it's bright, it's sunny. They often associate the Paingala nadi with the sun god, Surya. So it's revelatory, it's aggressive, it's masculine. And the powerful part of that, unlike some of the definitions I've been seeing on the web, if you look at that, if you even care to look at that, because they're doing physical interpretations of these things, and they never encounter a soul like, say, Sri Ramakrishna, who had the actual inner experience of Kundalini moving up these channels, and then related his experience to people as the mother Kundalini did move. It all came down later on to graphs and various ways of measuring, all related to the physical body and to Hatha Yoga, unfortunately. So when we look at an Upanishad, we get a chance to see Pingala, this accented nadi that's right-hand sided, that's male, that's sunny, that's revelatory and aggressive in its approach to raising the mind to a higher level, as we were just talking about. We get a chance to see that through the eyes of an ancient seer like Yajnavalkya, and his devoted student who comes to him, Paingala, and asks him about some very important questions that spiritual aspirants are wont to ask about, that most other people who are caught in the depths of lower consciousness never occur to. These questions of deep meaning and the origin of things, who am I, the kind of questions that start coming out of children quite young, if they have some background in spirituality already in them in the form of mental impressions from previous lifetimes. We were talking about that yesterday at satsang, if you remember. It would be nice if the educational systems in the West began to introduce into all of that secular learning some of the spiritual knowledge and wisdom that's been accepted by India for millennia and has produced in India thousands and thousands of enlightened beings, whereas it's very hard to find very many enlightened beings here, especially in this Kali Yuga, that are thinking about Brahman, that are thinking about Ishvara, that are thinking about Kundalini Mother, that are thinking about Dharma, that are thinking about Atmagyan, they're thinking about the Atman itself, the true self, and a whole list of things that can go forward that Paingala is interested in. Obviously, of course, if he has a great teacher like Yajnavalkya in his presence, it's rather like Swami Vivekananda having a great teacher like Sri Ramakrishna in his presence. And they can immediately get on a higher footing with everything that he knows and have it corroborated by an illumined soul. That makes a lot of difference in a society like India that was in such a darksome state when Sri Ramakrishna incarnated in the 1800s, had lost a lot of its knowledge of the ancient Dharma, of Yajnavalkya and others. And we're beginning to grasp at materialism in the West, unfortunately, and create some scars of materialism. Well, here in the West, at least, we don't have to worry about that. We never had any scars other than materialism. That's not necessarily a good thing, but we can now, without fear of losing it, begin to find it for the first time. And that's what Dharma and Atmagyan and teachings that from the Upanishads are all about. Some of us might have our memories perked by hearing these teachings in a day and age like this, and begin to meditate upon them, as is advised by Sri Krishna in the Gita and the seers of the Upanishads and other great teachings who want you to put a halt to all of this activity and bring back the senses from their objects, all the yogic things to do in practice, and to calm the mind down from its erratic thinking process all the time, and to see if you don't catch a drop of Amrit, or see a vision of the Lord, or have an experience of peace. What to speak of the peace that passes all understanding, even just everyday peace. Holy Mother said, you need that first and foremost. So she lived in this age, Kali Yuga, in the 1800s into the 1900s, outlived Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and was very clear about this kind of pursuit that the ancient seers had been about. They had realized to a great degree what they were after, and their students knew this, and then they would come seeking that truth that would free them from trials and trammels and vagaries and vicissitudes of Maya, get them off the cycle of rebirth and samsara. And these are all words that we were looking at the retreat recently. You have to know a word like Maya, to know that there's such a thing as Maya. And they did have a word for that. And for cyclic reincarnation and suffering, they had words for that too, long before Buddha came along and put his finger on it. So that speaks of a culture, of a race, that has a very long history in this science of wisdom, or the science of Shri. Remember, we were here in this room 4 or 5 weeks ago before we took our trip for the Windward Retreat, and we were talking about the science of Shri, Sa, Ka, La, Hrim, all of these little 2-letter words that are so powerful and that suggest teachings if you know how to interpret them right. I mean, they come right from the Divine Mother, for instance, when we sing, Vani Sarasvati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. Mangala Rupini Varade Sharade Sankata Harini Sanmati Daini Vani Saraswati Vakrevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. And it goes on with many verses like that, singing to the Vakdevi, the mother of the word. So these words go very deep, they go very far back in the history of any given yuga. And they also are responsible for starting out the cosmic cycle at the beginning of any Maha Yuga. That's 4 ages. We have a hard time thinking in terms of even one age. And when we do, in Western ways of thinking, it has a beginning, it has a middle, and somewhere out there it's going to have an end, when the sun burns out or whatever. So it's all in terms, again, of the physical. It's never in terms of the origin of things. And that's what we want to look at today with the Paingala Upanisad. Pingala is interested in origins of things, and we know in our study of various philosophies, these are called tattvas. So we grab every chance we can get to see the divinity existing in our teachers and our gurus and in these seers and in these realized souls like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. But then we can also continue that search deeper and look for how this consciousness that's non-dual and eternal works its way into tattvas and reveals the order of tattvas like was revealed by Lord Kapila in the ancient times in what's called Sankhya Yoga. So this time we get a little bit different look at the Samkhya Yoga list that Kapila proposed by Yajnavalkya's teachings, and it's an Upanishadic look or a Vedic look, that will show up some other facets of it. For instance, very interesting in this particular rendering that we find the 5 pranas listing, the one prana in 5 forms. We don't find that in Kapila's original list. It's like inferred in the ancient times. So here it's brought out, mentioned, and taught about to the devoted, to the devout student, Paingala. So all of this by way of introduction. I have, of course, created a cover chart for this class, but I thought at this time, and if I can challenge myself to do it, just read the first chapter of the Paingala Upanisad. I'm trying very hard not to stop and give commentary as I do, because that should be used, that should be given for the chart I have to show you today. We'll get right to that chart. So I'm going to try and just read it straight through, even though some of the language is a little bit esoteric and foreign to us. Some of my students have been long-lived in the study of Vedanta, brought to us by Swami Vivekananda. They'll recognize some of these things, but please notice the order, because it's very interesting how Yajnavalkya answers his student's question in a direct way. And this is just the first chapter of 4. It's all of 12 slokas, so we'll just take a little bit to read it. And of course it starts off, if you want to chant it with me, Om Purnamadaha. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnatcha Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om, that Brahman, is infinite. This universe is also infinite. Therefore, the infinite proceeds from the infinite. Then taking the infinite of the infinite, it remains as the infinite alone. Om, let there be peace with us then. Let there be peace in our environment. Let there be peace in the forces that act upon us. Om, peace, peace, peace. One of the peace chants that starts off every one of these 108 Upanishads that we still have left. So here's the actual 12 slokas. Then, indeed, Pingala approached Yajnavalkya as a disciple, and having served him for 12 years, said, Instruct me in regard to the supreme mystery of aloneness. The eminent Yajnavalkya replied, Dear one, in the beginning this indeed existed. It was the eternally free, immutable, everlastingly one, secondless Brahman, full of truth, knowledge, and bliss. In it existed the primordial and indefinable Prakriti, consisting of gunas in a state of equipoise, red, white, and dark, resembling the existence of water, silver, a man, and various forms, in the mirage of an oyster shell, a stump in a mirror. As reflected in it was witness consciousness. Having been modified with the preponderance of sattva and named avyakya, the unmanifest, this prakriti became the power of concealment. What was reflected in it became God consciousness. He has Maya under his control, is omniscient, is the initial cause of creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the worlds, and has the form of the sprouting world. He manifests the entire series of worlds within him and dissolves them back into him. Due to the power of the karmas of living beings in the world, spread out like a cloth, and due to their exhaustion, again in this world concealed, in him alone does the entire world exist as in a folded cloth. From the power of concealment controlled by God arose the power of projection called Mahat. What is reflected in it is the consciousness of Hiranyagarbha. He has the conceit of ownership as regards Mahat, and has a body partly manifest and partly unmanifest. From the projective power controlled by Hiranyagarbha arose the gross power called the ego, with a preponderance of tamas. What was reflected in it was the consciousness of the Virat, the cosmic person. That Virat, who has conceit in the ego, has a manifested body, is the chief person. Vishnu is the protector of all gross things. From that self arose ether. From ether arose air. From air, fire. From fire, water. And from water, earth. These 5 root elements are composed of the 3 gunas. Desiring to create, that world cause, controlling the quality of tamas, sought to render the subtle root elements gross. He bifurcated each of the extremely limited elements and again made the halves fourfold and added each of the 5 halves to 1/8 of the other 4. With this quintuplicated elements, he created endless crores of macrocosms, and for each of these 14 appropriate worlds and globular gross bodies, fit for all planes, for all of them. Having divided into 4 the rajas part of the 5 elements, he made prana with its 5-fold activity from 3 parts of it. From the 4th part of rajas he fashioned the organs of action. Having divided into 4 their sattvic part, out of the combination of 3 of them, he made the inner organ, the mind, with its 5-fold activity. From the 4th he made the organs of cognition, the 5 senses. From the combination of sattva he made the guardians of sense organs. He cast them, having created them, into the macrocosm. Due to his command, conjured with the ego, the Virat protected the gross elements of the cosmos. Commanded by him, Hiranyagarbha protected the subtle ones. But in the cosmos they could not, without God, pulsate or act. He desired to vivify them. So he split open the macrocosm, the channels of Brahman, and split open the crowns of the individuals, and he entered into the crowns of their heads. Though they were inert, like sentient beings, they performed each of its own functions. The omniscient Lord, conjoined with a streak of Maya, on entering the individual bodies and deluded by it, became the jiva, the embodied being. Due to self-identification with the first three bodies, he became both agent and reaper of agent's fruits, called karma. Possessing the attributes of wakefulness, dream, and deep sleep, swoon, and death, like a chain of buckets attached to a water wheel, he became troubled, and as it were, is born and dies, revolving like a potter's wheel. Now Paingala asked Yajnavalkya, how did the omnipotent Lord of all the worlds and the author of their manifestation, sustenance and dissolution, become the jiva? That's the first sloka of chapter 2. So you can see then how deep Paingala is into the tradition, what a master Yajnavalkya is at explaining it, and already some of the differences, or differences at least in accent, that the Vedic rishis had from the father of Samkhya Yoga when he listed the 24 cosmic principles. Thankfully to him that he did. So those 12 slokas give us a good starting place. First chapter of 4 of this Upanishad, and I think it'll clear up a lot when we take a look at the actual chart. I based the chart basically on the folded cloth. I thought that was very interesting. There's another, in the second chapter, Yajnavalkya starts to talk about how the 5 elements became everything here. Like, for instance, how water became blood, urine, and other liquids here, and how fire became other parts of the 5 senses, and how they actually, these 5 elements turned into all of these other principles that you see in everyone. So that will be another chart separately that I'm planning, hopefully for next week or the week after. But this chart here, you can see the finely folded cloth of cosmic consciousness, and you can see in the background that image superimposed over the millions of Brahmandas, or cosmic principles, worlds, that Yajnavalkya is explaining to Paingala. Basically, it becomes much clearer how the folded cloth really is a way of explaining all of these higher tattvas, out of which all manifestation comes. So if you think consciousness is that way, is wrapped like that, and each wrapping is causal, and then the next wrappings are subtler, and then the next wrappings are grosser, and you begin to put inside of each of the folds of these wrappings what Yajnavalkya is trying to explain to us in terms of tattvas or principles. The consciousness gets into those, as we just heard, through various beings like the Mahat, the great mind, finally followed up by Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, followed up by Virat, the cosmic person. So this is more Upanishadic way of explaining it, that has personality into it, you might say, where you didn't find that in or copy this list, except in the Purusha. So here you have a well-defined order of things, and although it doesn't start out with anything of a personality, does it? Let's go back to the first thing that he asks. Instruct me in regard to the supreme mystery of aloneness. So an advanced disciple like him probably, he studied at least 12 years with Yajnavalkya. That was kind of a set point that you're supposed to go to a guru. Study in those times, study for 12 years with one teacher, so you really got the transmission from that teacher. Nowadays you go to a guru a month, or take a mantra a day or a week. So that's not going to satisfy the criterion of the ancient rishis in order to transmit you the ancient divine wisdom called Adi Daiva Vidya. So Paingala is past, what I'm saying is he's really past that that overpass, that they had to go over to satisfy the criterion of taking 12 years close association with a great soul like Yajnavalkya. This again reminds us back to Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna and how precious that was. In this age we got to see that and feel its ramifications. So you can probably see Yajnavalkya, when he heard this question, teach me of the art of aloneness, or the supreme mystery of aloneness. He wants to know, and he already has a good inkling that form has come out of formlessness. That's why this Upanishad starts off, Purnamadaham, Purnamidam, Purnamadachyate. Purna means fullness. So in the way of the ancient rishis, when they had their realizations, fullness became the backdrop for everything, not emptiness. But there was an emptiness along the way to formless, and from the way back into form. There was an emptiness that they passed through. I've got here a chart, 2 or 3 charts that have inferences to formless. What he's calling here in the Upanishad, avyakta, what we're calling here in the chart, unmanifested prakriti, or avyakta, the power of concealment, right? So it's interesting that immediately the seers are thinking in terms of when form comes, formlessness gets concealed. Take form away, formlessness comes back. And so they're thinking in terms of formlessness being the essence. Well, we've never thought that way. And in India, they probably weren't thinking that way when they were worshiping the gods for so many ages. It's a divine mystery, as Pingala is talking about it. So he's seen through it. In his own meditations, he's seen everything go away. Ready? Dissolve the word into the mind, dissolve the mind into the intellect into the ego into the witness. This far he's come. And this is how Shankara puts it in 700 AD, much, much, much later than Yajnavalkya. If he wasn't just, had Yajnavalkya in him, since these seers of non-duality are one with one another. But anyway, he's telling you how the dissolution of everything during your spiritual practice leads you to this glimpse of emptiness, or this glimpse of formlessness. And many a great soul has paused there and fallen away from drawing the right conclusion. Tataksha Lakshana we studied, right, at the retreat a couple weekends ago. Tataksha Lakshana means avoiding false conclusions. And we've got them in droves here, philosophically, in the West. And currently, probably in contemporary India, a lot of false assumptions about Brahman. But if you've been raised with the great truth that formlessness is the backdrop to everything, and that form appears on its surface, then you go searching for the essence of formlessness. The closest you can find to the essence of formlessness is going to be the unmanifested prakriti. Avyakta is the Sanskrit word. So that's what Yajnavalkya starts out. He's saying, he says, basically, teach me this mystery of aloneness. And Yajnavalkya says, how am I going to put this in an instant in his head? And he says, yes, that too exists. So the very beautiful take on non-existence is that it exists. You wouldn't have a word for non-existence if it didn't exist. It wouldn't occur to anyone. So words, again, even words of emptiness, become very, very important to try and explain the inexplicable, to give the mind that's heading towards a formless place a grasp, a fingernail hold on that steep slope leading to Brahman's light. And so we're looking into a great teacher here, but we're also looking into a great practitioner when we look at Paingala. So our salutations be unto him, to both of them. So, yes, he says, that too exists. In the beginning, this existed. It was eternally free, immutable, and everlastingly one, secondless Brahman, full of truth, knowledge, and bliss. So it's hard to say here whether he's talking about Brahman or unmanifested Prakriti. he goes on right away by saying, it's rather like a mirage in an oyster shell. It's rather like water in a mirage. It's rather like silver in a shell. It's rather like reflection in a mirror. And those are called padarthas, right? I mean, basically you have a half dozen of those. Man in the stump, that one wasn't used here, I think. Man in the stump. And I've often brought out our one here in Hawaii, diamonds in Diamond Head, where the sailors first saw sparkling in Diamond Head when they came to Oahu, sailed in, and they thought they'd found diamonds and went up there and it was just obsidian. So it's what looks real, but which isn't, ultimately. It takes on that ambiance. So this is where he begins to infer the seeds of all existence, forms. Forms are not real, ultimately. Only the formless is real. Brahman is real, the worlds are not. It's the final conclusion of the Vedanta. So when you come down to inspecting the real and the unreal in Vedanta, then you're going to have to know the nature of both, right? Om Asat Vijite Bhavo Nabhavo Vijite Sataha, I chanted yesterday. Ubayorapi Drishantos to Anios Tattva Darshibihi, Krishna says in the Gita. Basically, you have the seers know both the real and the unreal. But before they go looking at them and examining them, they know that the unreal really doesn't exist, like man in a stump, like silver and mother of pearl, like so forth, diamonds and Diamond Head. So they'll know that it's unreal when they start looking at it, and Sri Ramakrishna called this withdrawing from Maya before you examine it. They knew that Maya was there, they knew that it had that effect on the senses, knew that it had that concealment on the mind, right? And that you had to be very careful when getting into it, because then you could fall into believing it was real. Maya is very power of concealment, called avarana shakti later, the power to conceal things. Form just does that naturally. So if all of a sudden you're in a formless state and forms appear to you, you're not going to doubt them. It would be a very, very rare soul that would say, what are those? I don't believe them. No, that's not the way of it. But people would run toward these forms like they would run towards an oasis in a desert to get water. They're thinking, that's real, I can get satisfied there. Immediately they forget that the only satisfaction is in their own formless, true self called Atman. Always was that way, will never not be that way, and that's always the case. So this is the power of concealment and its influence on millions and millions of souls in the many Brahmarandhas, the many worlds. So I'll give you that much as far as the first thing that Yajnavalkya talks about. Now I want to take you through the chart generally before we look at it specifically. So this will clear it up for you. What I've just said, I hope it will clear it up better. The top quote is from the Paingala Upanisad. Brahman, God consciousness, contains within it the ever-sprouting worlds. Due to the karmas of living beings, all realms are spread across him as patterns on fabric. And upon their exhaustion, they get concealed. In Brahman alone does the entire set of burgeoning worlds exist, like a finely folded cloth. So that's what I culled out of the Upanishad in order to explain what Yajnavalkya was about to try and describe to Paingala. Basically, other parts of that are very important will answer immediate questions that others like Paingala have already had and maybe never quite got fully answered to their satisfaction, is how do beings appear? Because basically that's his next question, right, in the first chapter. Remember that? Now he asks him, how did this omnipotent Lord of all worlds and the author of their manifestation, sustenance, and dissolution become the jiva? How did he get embodied? How did he even accept this form and say, I'm this form, like the Virat? Vishnu is supposed to protector of all the worlds, right? So how did he get into that position of assuming all the worlds, become the sacrificer, the Adi Yagya that Krishna talks about in the Gita? There's the Adi Bhaudika, there's the Adi Bhuta rather, there's the Adi Daiva, and the Adi Atma, the soul, but there's also the I myself, he says, I'm the Adi Yagya, I do the sacrifice, which causes all these worlds to be, and I protect them. This comes down to this karma that's making beings take on the covering of concealment. And as soon as you accept yourself as a form, you start doing actions. Karma comes, reaction comes from action, right? And of course there are good actions and bad actions and mixed actions. And the three kinds of karma come from those, right? Sanchita, Agami, and Prarabdha. But then there's these, and there's these three worlds in which these karmas also get perpetrated and have to get paid. So this is the way Yajnavalkya is saying that on this finely folded cloth, they appear because of their karmas, and when their karmas are worked out, they disappear from it. So it's a very beautiful thing that Paingala can go back and meditate on, right? And say, wow, my teacher just told me something really fantastic. I want to look into this with deep reflection and get to the root of this, maybe even experiencing it myself. My own karmas have got to dissolve so that I can, extract myself out from the folds of this cloth and be one with myself again, and never get caught in it again. I will become a jivan mukti, not a jiva. So, in that way, it's just wide open and powerful. A few words from a great teacher like that, from a very profound question by an astute and qualified disciple, opens up all of this for us later, thousands and thousands of years later, to ponder ourselves. Reading the top quote from the Paingala Upanisad to you and talking about how the power of concealment, is, you might say it's an answer to why people appear in form. It's all karma, and karma is sometimes a negative word, sometimes a neutral word, sometimes it's a good word. But basically it's an overall word for manifestation in the 7 worlds. What he's calling here the 14 worlds. And all their Brahmandas. Brahmandas or Brahmarandras are, thousands and thousands, crores. Crore, I think, means thousands. So it's crores and crores of worlds inside of each one of those 14 subdivisions. Just like here, we really only have one world, although there's the world of the insects and animals and microorganisms all here too that are involved. But then out in outer space, there's all these millions and millions of planetary bodies. The same way with inner worlds, if you study them and get into them, then you're going to find that they also have crores and crores of worlds in which beings can manifest themselves on. The ancestors, they're called the life heavens sometimes. Ancestors, the demigods, gods, and so forth. And these go deeper and deeper into the finer and finer folds of the cloth of consciousness that we're using here, as Yajnavalkya is trying to use here to explain it to us. So that's one of the key teachings that comes out right away that Yajnavalkya doesn't shy away from. He says, because he already knows Paingala is going to ask him in a few minutes, how did we become the jiva, please? And I know how I got here and how I can get out of it if I want, because he's probably acquainted with suffering if he's gone that deep into spiritual life. First noble truth is, suffering is. That's said by one of the recent, fairly recent in this term, greatest soul, one of the greatest souls of India. So here we have Yajnavalkya jumping to the chase, as it were. And he says, due to the karma of living beings, all realms are spread across him, that's Brahman, as patterns on fabric. And upon their exhaustion, they get concealed again. So these karmas come forth and cause the manifestation, hopefully get worked out. In one lifetime would be a good scenario according to Lord Vashishta. And then they've had their experience of embodiment, and they disappear again back into consciousness itself. But Yajnavalkya wants him to know, in Brahman alone does the entire set of burgeoning worlds exist, like in a finely folded cloth. Right, to strew a bunch of sand over a cloth and then start folding it, you see, and then it's like that, all these bits of sand are in the folds, right? So that's how worlds are contained in consciousness, and, you know, like Dune Messiah-like idea of folding space, you know. So, you know, that they had in science fiction movies. So pretty soon you've got consciousness like being folded, and inside of each fold are these many, many universes called Brahmandas. And he goes on to say that the Lord also creates all these globular bodies. He puts it here in this particular manifests the entire world that get dissolved into him, spread out like this cloth. All right, so basically then they're listed here in order of what Yajnavalkya talks about. First, unmanifested prakriti is the seeds. Nature comes from seeds, and we know that happens out here, but the seeds are visible mostly, and then they turn into visible objects. But he's talking about the seeds in thought, of thoughts in consciousness that aren't visible to most people, and in that way have to be looked upon as being contained somewhere inside of a level of your consciousness. He's about to embark again on an exposition of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That comes in chapter 2 and 3. So he's already broaching that Advaita Vedanta teaching of our three states of our awareness. And in a deep sleep, of course, are where these seeds are being held in us. I have brought a chart to show that to us after I go through this chart and its layout. So after unmanifested prakriti, all the seeds caught or held in abeyance, they call that. Yeah, he said that here. And sattva, rajas, and tamas, that helps. You see over here, sattva, rajas, and tamas up in the corner there, on each one of those folds. So in each one of these folds, as it comes and manifests itself, is being manifested by the appearance of the three gunas, which are nature, which are nature's triple strand. So in that way, all the seeds are being held in abeyance. Even the gunas are held in abeyance right now. So it's going to take some sort of initiatory thought, and that thought happens by the Mahat. We had that look at this chart twice now on the Mahat, which we can look at again, about Lord Brahma and how he projects everything with the power of the Chitti Shakti, the mother of thought, into the unmanifested prakriti, and causes those seeds to burgeon at the beginning of a cosmic cycle. She gave him the words, Lord Brahma, the Divine Mother, gave him the words through which to start the cosmic cycle into motion again. So that's what's going to be happening with seed words that we've been talking about a lot, called bijams. Om is the bijam of Brahman, and I just saying about Saraswati, Aim is the bijam for Saraswati, who is involved in this process with the meaning of words, and Hrim is the bijam for Durga and Kali, that's going to be responsible for transformation of things. So there's the Mahat Srishti, power of projection. So power of concealment, and then somebody has to come along and reveal it. Is that Divine Mother? Yes and no. Actually, sometimes they call the Divine Mother the matrix of everything, but actually the word's the matrix. Mother is one with Brahman. So she is Brahman. So the real matrix of it all is the word. And the mother tends that word, as I just sang in this beautiful song to Saraswati. And she will give it to Lord Brahma and say, think on this, vibrate with this word, just like we have to do with these words that the Guru is giving to the students. They have to take them home and vibrate with them so that these words will go deep in their understanding. And then pretty soon they'll be like an advanced soul, like Pingala, finding out deeper and deeper mysteries of formlessness when nobody in this world around him knows the first thing about formlessness. Sound familiar? And they don't want to go anywhere near formlessness. You're talking about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa here. There wasn't a soul on earth that wanted to go near formlessness until Sri Ramakrishna showed up and opened the nadi in Swami Vivekananda to also approach formlessness without fear. So this is not unusual that people shy away from nothingness, or what he's calling here the science of aloneness. People go into caves, into forests in the old days to get this silence so they can tap into their true nature, which they suspect is formless and non-vibratory. But the mind's not letting them get to it because it's vibrating. Well, we can blame Lord Brahma for that. He's the first vibration, probably, but he's been asked to do this. Why? For the satisfaction of all the karmas that are strewn across this cloth of consciousness from a previous age. They have to work them out. By the millions, people have to work these karmas out. You know some of Sri Ramakrishna's stories about that, like the old woman on the beach that gathers different things in her jar, and stores them in her beach hut. Those things are things that are been taken from the beach, and from the ocean and so forth. And those are to be stored up to be used for the souls that are going to reincarnate in the next age. So she's got these souls already earmarked by their unresolved karmas to come back again into these worlds of karma, basically Bhur, Bhuva, and Swaha, and work out their karmas in earth, netherworlds, and heaven, but also in hell. There's 7 patalas involved. You can see down here, basically, here's the 7 lokas and the 7 patalas inside of this mirror that we'll get to that. But when the jiva got caught, as he said here, inside of the projected world, the Lord found out that he could penetrate through them, through the crown of their head. Yajnavalkya says, that's Kundalini. He penetrated the crown of their head in order to vivify them, Vivekanandify them, I like to say. And then they could pulsate, then they could act, then they could move, then they could solve their karmas, and they could gain enlightenment and get out of this whole projection in a mirror. That's a little bit more about the setup of this chart. Back to the Mahat then, after unmanifested Prakriti, we're to think that it is so wide and so vast and so deep and so infinite that even Lord Brahma has it in it as seeds. So it's not just individual souls that have seeds in deep sleep that they are going to water and manifest their forms, but so does the Trinity. So that's how the avyaktam, the unmanifested, is, as he says here, eternally free, immutable, everlastingly one, secondless Brahman, full of truth, knowledge, and bliss. So it has all of that contained within it. The Mahat's the first mind that comes. Mahat means the great, so it's the great mind, first mind that appears as a great form to masterly take those seeds and put them into manifestation at the behest of Mother Shakti. she's the lightning that's coming through the crown of our heads and penetrating. The next thing he mentions is very, very beautiful, because quite often we talk about Lord Brahma, even the Trinity, Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, as being one thing. And we also throw in there Om, the word, as if those things were one thing. But they're gradations of Brahman. So this is how Brahman might be formless and absolute and full of truth, knowledge, and bliss, but if it is so full, it must have levels of fullness in it that can be realized by and gleaned and enjoyed with ecstatic bliss inside of it. See, levels inside of Brahman. So tend to just look at Brahman as something that's amorphous with no boundaries and all that. That's with regards to the boundaries of these worlds, the boundaries of these minds, and the boundaries of these tattvas, but not with regards to itself. It's full, 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 as the Upanishad just told us, Purnamadaha Purnamidam. And so that's beginning to become manifested, and Hiranyagarbha means golden egg, basically, if best way they put it in English, is the cosmic egg that holds all the other Brahmandas, all the other eggs within it. And so this is what Lord Brahma is projecting himself into by the power of the Chitti Shakti, so that this will split. In Tantra, they call that the bifurcation of Shiva and Shakti, right? The word will Bindu Nada Kalatita, if you remember the teachings in Tantra. You can look in the Footfalls book and get teachings on that. And basically when Shiva and Shakti are just one indivisible mass, but when they bifurcate into two, then the word Om begins to hum, you see, with their closeness. And out of the word then will come these levels of manifestation. So the Tantrists have their own very beautiful way of saying how this same process happens that the ancient rishis of the Vedas were also meditating on and finding their own language to express. So you see under Hiranyagarbha, as he said, and somewhat rather surprisingly, ahamkara, the interesting word they used here, seems a little demeaning. Oh, he had conceit, and our word in English for conceit, it comes kind of arrogance. So later on he uses that too. Oh, this arrogance that was in him, This is presume to, project these beings and then be the protector of them, kind of thing. So ahamkara, whatever the case may be, gets its start there in the Hiranyagarbha. And the way that's described in very brief by Yajnavalkya is that all of these beings, due to the bifurcation and the 5 elements and the adding of the different parts of the elements, and the beings that came out with their minds and bodies and subtle bodies and senses, needed protectors. And so that was what Hiranyagarbha and the Virat next to it took up the task of doing. The gods and the goddesses basically are the protectors of the ancestors and so forth. They protect each other. The lords of the senses need protecting. The lords of the elements need protecting, just like we do here on earth. And so the Lord divided up these eternal principles and turned some of them into guardians, like God of lightning, Vidyut. Every religious tradition has the gods and goddesses that are more powerful than humans, that are looking after them and looking over them, and that they take refuge in and ask for protection from dangers. So this has been told by Yajnavalkya then to Paingala too, and this is where the cosmic egg and its chief person, they say here, Virat comes in. That's always assigned to Vishnu. He's the protector and projector. Well, he's the protector and preserver of all the worlds. He's always been given that position. Lord Brahma is the projector, and then he's the protector, and then Shiva's the dissolver. So the Trinity could easily be fit in here, but like I say, Yajnavalkya is making this only a little bit more personal by mentioning Mahat and Virat, better than Lord Copula did by only mentioning the Purusha. However, what was common to both lists is the seeds of Prakriti, and that's missing in our cosmology today. In the whole world, it's missing. That we don't know formlessness is peopled with seeds, peppered with seeds. And that's where everything comes from. We're looking for where things come from other physical things. Oh, the tree came from the seed. That's the end of it. Okay, let's collect some seeds, grow some food, and eat, and not know anything. But seeds of the seeds, I want to know what those are. Well, then come with me to the realm of thought. The thought gave word to the deed, but the thought also gave word to the object. And that's where we have an impasse. We don't understand that. We can't accept that because we don't believe in the inner worlds. We don't know about the tanmatras, we don't know about the life force, prana, and we don't know about the gods and goddesses anymore. Not especially in this country, America. We have none. We have to, if we believe at all, we have to borrow pantheon from someone else. Greek, Rome, better India. And in that way then, you're retracing your steps back to a knowledge of the formless and how everything came into form in its original inception, not in some second or third generation or worse, you see. That's just a repeat of everything else. It doesn't ever open up the secrets of where things actually came from. You can't just look at a seed and say, oh, isn't that a miracle? You have to take that seed and say, this miracle came from this miracle. And I have to study this miracle like Paingala is doing with a great soul who has studied it and realized it so that he knows where all the Brahmandas came from, out of which all the seeds came from in his mind, out of which all the seeds in nature came from. Right? Soul, mind, nature. Just like that. It's an easy involution back in if you follow the Indian seers and believe in them. And we won't do it. Most of us won't do it. It's the ancient Adi, original Daiva, divine Vidya, wisdom. Nobody ever went as deep into realizing it and took as much time into expressing it as the Indian seers did. And that's what produced Buddhas later on, this kind of realization. The next thing he gets at, because there's a lot to say about Virat and Hiranyagarbha, you can see that you might say there was a huge seed in unmanifested Prakriti, and the great mind, was the hand that laid it. And then, this hand laid this great golden egg called Hiranyagarbha, and Vishnu liked it and took it over. You see, that's got to be mine now. I'm going to protect it. You see, and so there you have unmanifested Prakriti to Mahat, to Hiranyagarbha, to Virat, in a very kind of humorous and simple way of putting it. But basically, it all comes from seeds, from a great seed thought, and the greatest of all seed thoughts is AUM, if you spell it correctly. It's what I forgot to put up in this little fold. I was going to put an Om sign there, but next version I'll do that. If I find any typos, this is all new, so it's the first time anyone's seeing it. So the first time we're studying this great Upanishad. Next fold. Please step into the next fold with me in your mind, and we'll look at what he calls the subtle root elements. Did you think it was just ether, air, fire, water, and earth? How many thought that? No, it's not. Of course, as you read on, you realized it wasn't, but it's actually the tanmatras he's talking about here. Let's take that up again. After the conceited ego got a hold of everything, from that Virat, the protector, arose ether and from ether air, from air fire, from fire water, and from water earth. That happens again later at the level of thought to matter, right? Thought to matter. Direct with prana in between connecting. But before that happened, and here's where the origins to the 5 elements have never been discovered by most people, there were tanmatras, subtle elements. Vivekananda said they don't have knowledge of the tanmatras here when he came to the West. And they've forgotten what prana is, and thereby they've forgotten what psychic prana is. They began to climb the ladder when some yogis started coming. But some of the yogis that started coming here were hatha yogis only, and they were also defining great systems back in the 60s, like Kundalini Yoga, in a physical way only. And that was, that's hopefully a climbing a ladder that's not going to lead to a few broken rugs and a real bad fall. Then that's why I wrote the book, Reclaiming Kundalini Yoga. I hope you all go read that and read it, reread it. You can see how we want to get this back, this interpretation of physical only, get it back, take it back, erase it, put it out of the way, put it where it belongs with the physical only, and make these connections that Kundalini Yoga, that Yajnavalkya is talking about, comes from. We just studied 2 Upanishads in the last 3 months that were Kundalini Yoga mentioned Upanishads, Mother Upanishads, Shakti Upanishads. One of her finest names is Kundalini, they say in the scriptures. So yes, the subtle root elements would be a nice way of putting it in English, so you wouldn't mistake them for the gross elements. They usually say the gross elements would be ether, air, fire, water, and earth, but we'd be looking at them as we climb the ladder, earth first. Then we'd look at water, then we'd look at fire, then we'd look at air, and then we'd look at ether in an involutionary way, if we wanted to take them back. Like the Tibetan Buddhists teach that to the dying, right? As man's passing from his body, oh, you're going to feel, shakiness now, and nervousness, and uneasiness, and so forth. That's because you're giving up earth. Now you're going to feel thirsty, and you're going to feel like it's because you're giving up water. And now you're going to feel like you're hot and sweaty and perspiring and burning. That's because you're giving up fire. And so they actually guide the soul to let go of the 5 elements, because unless they've learned about the tanmatras, they think the 5 elements are real, and they just spent 80, 90, 100 years in relationship with them, right? Our relationship with nature is all about with the 5 elements. But I've also often made the comment that we don't separate them out even here. If we go swimming in a river, oh, it's water, how nice. We go back to land, oh, it's land, how nice. But the idea of land and water having a relationship with the sun and the sky, fire, and with the air you're breathing and with the space you're walking through never gets put together by anyone. They always just think about one. I think I'll be a gardener. Then earth is your whole life. Water comes second. The sun comes third. So, but you're really pretty much concerned just with seeds in the earth. So this is a comprehensive look at how to realize the relationship between things, connect them, and then have a composite picture of how Lord Brahma, what Lord Brahma actually got from Divine Mother when he got the bijams, the seed words. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk kind of thing. Here, take these beans, and he doesn't know what he has. All of a sudden, the next day, after his mother threw him out the window, he's got a beanstalk into the sky. That would be like, Mother giving Om to Lord Brahma, and he thinks about it, and says, wow, I've got a lot of ideas for 100,000 Brahmandas into the sky of awareness. And I'm going to project them now. I'll throw them out the window into the, into Mahat, and the Mahat will produce the Hiranyagarbha, and the Hiranyagarbha will be, Vishnu will come running, right? Brahma did his work, now Vishnu comes running to protect it. And then there's this long preservation period for all the worlds, ages long. thousands of years long, where people are, with globular bodies, are being produced of all kinds: humans, animals, insects, demigods, ancestors, gods, goddesses, Trinity, watching it all. So the tanmatras are a missing fold. It's kind of like that when this became such a small fold. I said, oh, that's perfect, everything fell just right. Because we can insert the tanmatras in there, the subtle root elements. And you know, if you knew about them, then you'd know how all of these got combined and what the role of each of these. I mean, because if you master earth, and you know, you become infinitely wealthy. If you master water, you never thirst again. If you master fire, you're never in want for knowledge again, and so on. He begins to talk about the meaning of the 5 elements inside of the context of human beings. This great master, Yajnavalkya, yajna, sacrifice, taking on the sacrifice of all his students. What's of secondary note is the order, because I ask you to look at the order. This is from inside out, and we're turning and going outside in when we're involving, but how it all evolved with a capital E, not just evolve from the Big Bang kind of idea, but how it all evolved with a capital E from the Mahat out, using seeds. Then it has a further order, is that there has to be space first. It's the rule of thumb with the word. There has to be space first, because para has no space. Pashanti has space. See, the thought of space has to happen first before thing forms and time can move forward in something. We spent a long time pondering this. So basically, what comes first is space. When space is established as a territory that has itself many folds in it, and now I think I'll put air there, because things can grow if they breathe. Everything needs to breathe. Everything needs to, it's again another rule of life, right? To expand, to contract, to expand, to hold, to contract. Everything's doing that here. You can't see it. Some things are doing it very slow, and quite often you forget to breathe yourself, right? But if you want to bring yourself back to higher consciousness, breathe. It's just one of the secrets of living. It's like people never think of the 5 elements out there when they're in them. They also never think that if they breathe, they might feel better. Tamas can be overcome by breathing in an instant. So can rajas, quelled. So you can do it yogically, Puraka Rechaka, Kumbhaka Rechaka, and another Kumbhaka at the end. You can do it with the nostrils. One of those is the pingala, that you're invigorating. You're waking up the pingala nerve, so that the sun can shine there, so that the male part of you that's aggressive and will not take any nonsense will rise in you and end up, at the higher senses and vivify them, so that they can open and be ready for that beam of light that's going to come from on high, from in deep. So, from ether air, so the tanmatra of ether, the idea of space, gives rise to the idea of air. Think of these as subtle root elements that haven't turned into what you see out here. That is, what you see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, because ether goes with hearing, air goes with feeling, touch, fire goes with seeing, water goes with tasting, earth goes with smelling. You see, that's the next 5, which he already has told us about, right? Then he conjoined with a streak of Maya, entering into the individual bodies, splitting open the macrocosm, and he made in them the inner organ with its 5-fold activity, and then from a fourth of that, he made the organs of cognition. Organs of cognition are tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling. Organs of action are locomotion, procreation, elimination, and so forth. So that all came in order from inside out. The kingdoms of heaven are within you is like one of the most profound ways in which you can simply understand that some souls, even 2,000 years ago, which is very recent in India's history, understood the tattvas, how they came out and how they go back in. That is, how they came out is God's, Lord Brahma's business. But how you get back in, that's your business. And what do you need for that to get back in? The Guru. You need a Yajnavalkya to come and tell you this and corroborate it for you. Yeah, turn back in. That's what I did. Follow me. Don't have any fear. Don't brood about it. Don't have any doubts. This is the ancient wisdom. I can officially corroborate it for you right now with my own direct experience. Nadi jasana. Now, follow the way in, the path inward. And if it all came out in that way, if ether turned into air and then air turned in, out of air came fire, then I'm going to find the fire god pretty soon, and he's going to reveal to me, like he did in 2 other Upanishads we've studied already, then he's going to reveal to me the god of air and the god of ether. And further, when fire turns into water, then I have to go to the god of water and then the god of earth, you see. And the protectors were all there, lined up with them, because of the all-seeing, omniscient nature of Brahman, who put that into everything, from the seeds down to the Mahat, the Trinity down to Vishnu, and all the way down into the tanmatras and the organs of senses, organs of the senses, right? And later on, you might also be thinking, as we're just kind of looking at the whole chart right now, is that there's where the 5 pranas, he puts them pretty late in the picture. I would suffice to say that what I've always taught was the 5 pranas are in a subtler form. They're called Chitti Shakti, or Shakti, and in a subtle form of that they're called Kundalini. So basically that's energy. Wisdom energy is pulsating through her black obsidian-like form. Who said that? You did at the retreat when you recited that poem. So these are pulsating. And so, he saves these for later probably because by now you probably he's going to ask, what kind of energy is that that's doing all that? You said it's Lord Brahma, but what are his powers? And so his powers are very secret in terms of Shakti, because he knows where he got the words. Nobody else does. Very few do anyway. And now what he's got is his powers that are coming out of him. They're called prana Shaktis. That's how Kundalini Yoga system labels them. Am I out of time, by the way?
Oh, good. You've got 6 minutes.
Okay, good. I want to keep us on track. So, the prana Shaktis are very, very powerful for the individual practitioner. You can imagine how great they are for Lord Brahma. I just barely showed a couple of these charts that we'll get to next week, but they're brought along in order to flesh out these 4 things, basically. Prakriti, Mahat, Hiranyagarbha, and Virat. But down here it becomes more known to us. That is basically by the way of these tanmatras that we're talking about, that one comes out of the other. Actually, so then the one comes out of the next and the one comes out of the next, but what you really should be saying here is out of ether, comes air, fire, earth, and fire, water, and earth. Then, they each give rise to the next one, the next set. Because if you take them back in, earth gets folded back into water, right? But what gets folded back into fire is not just water, it's earth and water, you see. And then those 3 get folded back into air, all 3 of them. And then those 4 get folded back into ether, all 4 of them. So they come out that way too. And that's the origin of what we see around here in terms of a cosmic law of the Mahat, the great mind. That's solid wisdom that you can bank on in your highest mind. There's no doubts to that. There's no arguing with it. The great seers by the thousands have realized this and become illumined because of it. And it all really comes back to just Purusha and Prakriti, the soul and nature. That relationship, when those 2 got together, ay, as the rabbis say, oi, oi. You see, basically, that relationship between Purusha and Prakriti had to be kept very, very clean. You see, or else, as the ages went forth, Treta, Dvapara, Kali Yuga, and so forth, as those went forth, then you had this convolution going on. You know, this exacerbation of all the karmas that were there in the folded cloth, piled on top of each other, one on top of each other, many millions of beings strong. See, cosmic karma, collective karma that is cosmic first, then collective, then individual. But again, take it back in to the collective and to the cosmic. You have all of these acts that have been done and their results. So quite often, and I thought of it the other day, there's another chart I might show with you, is how the tattvas that are far flung away from the source are impure. They're called Ashuddhi. And then the cosmic principles that are closer to the source, like midway, are called Shuddha-Shuddhi, pure and impure mixed. So the ones that are far away are impure, not in a moral way, you know, in a way of not having much light in them. You know, they don't shine by their own light, as the Upanishads say. The sun shines by its own light, but you know, other things don't. Or if they do, they shine with a lot less, like a firefly. So those are called far-flung Ashuddha principles. And then the next class of principles, tattvas, are called Shuddha-Shuddha. They're pure, but they also contain some impurities in them. What does it remind you of? Like the spandhas of Shaivism, right? Where some beings imitate that. Some of them are pure, some of them are less pure, more malas, less malas, down a spectrum. So it's not just principles that are doing that, it's it's living beings, souls that are also following that. So we want to work our way back to the close, you know, close to Brahman. Some karmas cannot be undone. What do I do with those? Stay close to Brahman, Shankara says to his disciple. So do everything you can with your sadhana to release yourself from bondage, then stay close to Brahman on top of that. So in this way, and to finish that thought, then the principles that are closest to Brahman, or to the word, you know, are going to be called Shuddhi, pure. Thoughts that are closest to Brahman are called Chit Shuddhi, and they're operated by the Chit Shakti. Be a good segue. If we had another hour, I would take it and we would go on. But here, let's end then our first class on the Paingala Upanisad and move towards next Sunday's class as well. Devim prasadam pranatarti hantrim Yogendra pujam jugadharma patrim Tam sharadam bhakti vijnana datrim Daya swarupam pranamami nityam. Om Jananim Sharanam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Tvayeshitva Pranamami Mahor Mahor Pranamami Mahor Mahor. O Ramakrishna, teacher of all, O Sharada, goddess divine, in bosom holding those lotus feet, salutations to both, ever be of mine. Om